Hey, beautiful souls. I am excited to join you today to talk about what really is behind the mission of the Everyday Mystic, which is to demystify mysticism so that it can be part of everyone's everyday life, so that it isn't some far outreaching concept or a subject that we can't all be part of, that we can't all live into, make part of our everyday lives. And as we get to the bottom of these 5 myths that I'm going to cover today, I think you'll understand, like I do, that it isn't even about integrating it into our life, but it's really about how we live our life. So let's get started in debunking the 5 myths of mysticism and spirituality, at least 5 that I'm going to cover today. And I want to give you my perspective on them. Myth number 1 is that mysticism and spirituality require isolation and intense study. There have been religious scholars, mystics even, and people who we consider spiritual masters, teachers, the people that we follow today. A lot of the texts that are read by many spiritual students are written by people who have gone into intense periods of isolation, who have studied the world around them to come up with things that have become really indelible in our world as those spiritual teachings. Taoism, for example, was fashioned after the writings of Lao Tzu, who absolutely had brilliant and enlightening things to say that created the foundation of Taoism, something that we've created an ism out of, a practice of, a study of this system, the structure of understanding that we've given a name to. But what's interesting about Lao Tzu or some of the other spiritual teachers that are given credit for Taoism is that they weren't scholars necessarily. They weren't setting out to uncover and unlock a mystery through the study of texts and teachings. Lao Tzu specifically studied nature, experienced the world around him, and wrote about what he discovered in that. Buddha would be considered the same, sitting under the Bodhi tree and coming to enlightenment through stillness and through an understanding of the world through observation, through direct experience. Mysticism is about this direct experience with God, the creator, source consciousness, the energy of all that is. It's that direct experience through a stillness, through an actual download, which is a word that's used a lot in the spiritual circles today. And it really does describe that experience of information just coming into you. And it's, of course, a word that we use in the world of technology of when we download an app or download something onto our computer or our phones. It's a word that is a part of our modern lexicon. But that's what it feels like when you get a spiritual message, information, when an experience is coming through you. It feels like a download from somewhere else. It feels like information just arriving in you. And that information typically doesn't arrive through intense study. It arrives in moments of clarity, in moments of stillness, in a time sometimes of even deep crisis, of where an opening happens for you in that rock bottom moment. But spiritual enlightenment isn't going to necessarily come through isolation and intense study. It's going to come through the openness that we have to this information coming through. Can we pick up incredible information, inspiration through writings of Lao Tzu, of Jesus Christ? It's hard to understand what those writings, though, are of Jesus Christ, or the teachings of Jesus Christ, because those were all interpreted through disciples that then went and wrote down the information that they received. So it's hard to even get a direct line of information from a teacher like that, unless, of course, we sit in our own stillness and sit within our own beingness and ask for that direct connection. Ask a spiritual teacher, someone we consider an ascended master, someone we consider to have discovered truths about creation, about what this life is all about living here with purpose. When we go into our own meditation and we connect into that, we can then connect directly to information that may come from an angel, an ascended master, a spiritual teacher that's moved on, but it isn't necessarily going to come through the writings or the study of those writings. Think of how a person like Jesus Christ came to understanding. It wasn't through studying books. It was through moving through the world. It was through observing. It was through interacting. It was through choice making. And it was through a direct experience with God. So that's myth number one. This spiritual life and this being a mystic isn't going to come necessarily through going and isolating yourself in a cave and studying ancient texts. But that isolation, that stillness that we get into is absolutely part of what helps to open us up to this information coming through directly downloaded from the creator, from source consciousness, from the energy of all that is, that has all this information that's here for us for the asking. But we don't need to be in isolation for that. We can be in the midst of a city and on a crowded city subway and receive this information as long as we're open to it, as long as our channels are tuned to that, receiving an intuitive download to not go down that scary alley or to go this way because something is here for you over here. Part of that connection to our source that we all have connection to. Intuition is just our soul's ability to tap into source so that we then can directly get that information and it can help lead and guide our lives. And in actuality, being in the midst of crowds, in the midst of people, in the midst of noise, and be able to receive those messages, those downloads, that guidance, it's even more compelling because we are able then to filter out all of that other information coming from outside of us and truly tune in within, which is where the wellspring of all of that communication is happening. Yes, it's source consciousness and creation and the energy of all that is all around us. It's the God that exists and that created all of this all around us and in all things. But how we tune into it is from our still center. So to get to that still center when you're in the midst of chaos is part of the practice, part of the gifts that come through tuning into this type of lifestyle. So can it come from moments of isolation? Absolutely. Because in those moments of isolation, something that you maybe experience on a retreat or just going and staying in a mountain cabin and walking in the woods alone or swimming on an isolated beach or being alone in isolation can trigger these deeper connections to that inner source, but that inner source isn't going anywhere. It is right there at all times, accessible at any time. And it's not something that we have to go into some special space or place to access. Okay, myth number 2 is mysticism and spirituality are discovered and found through one path, one system, one tradition. There are many paths, and I would say limitless, countless paths back home to our understanding of ourselves as divine, that we are a spark and an emanation of God that has entered into this earthly form that's here to experience itself through the contrast and the experience of this realm, that we get to experience what it feels like to be that emanation grounded here in a body, in an experience that is flesh and bones, that is ourselves as part of this beautiful creation, and also a creator of this experience. That path that we talk about in spirituality really is, and I don't know who coined this and said this originally, but it truly is a pathless path. Because when we think of a path, we think of this sort of one direction or this finite space in which we flow or walk or travel to get to a specific destination. The destination is home to our true nature, to ourselves as divine beings. But the way in which we get there is limitless. There is no path to that. So the path, quote unquote, of spirituality is a pathless path. It is the journey that we're all on, even if you don't understand or realize that you're on it. There are so many traditions that help us to remember that we're on this journey of experiencing ourselves in this realm, but also experiencing the remembrance of who we actually are, which are these divine beings, these souls in a body, and experiencing the unfolding of that. So many practices, religions, spiritual paths, and teachers can show us that and can remind us of our divinity, but none are the only way. None are the only path, because there is no one path. We are here, all of us, to uniquely experience what it's like for our own unique souls to be here in this specific, unique incarnation, time and place, the set of experiences that our human self has, all of it. We're here to have that, and it's unique to us. We get to then unfold whatever we're here and meant to experience, and whatever we wish to experience, whatever we choose to experience, all with this intention of understanding beingness here in this realm, and the experience of understanding ourselves as even more powerful, even more creative than we think we are in this realm. We have so much more choice and ability than so many of us think we have, because we are limiting ourselves in this human form. I like to think of ourselves as this human soul hybrid, that we are a hybrid of divine light within this earthly form. And through that, we get to experience immense pleasure, immense joy, immense feeling of all sorts. Even the deepest lows are such a depth of experience and feeling that give us such an interesting experience here to say, isn't that worth it to have this sense and sensibility? So that's myth number 2, that there is only one path, or that there is a set of answers and it's found in this book, or it's through this guru, or it's through this set of teachings. All of it is divine creation unfolding through the different beings here that are giving different interpretations of their own unique experience that can be transpersonal for us. And the things that I think hit home and become highly popularized are things that are at a level of its own illumination, its own understanding, that so many people go, wow, okay. That's hitting home. That's something that it feels so truthful, so honest, so huge, in such resonance with this thing that then a lot of people think it is the capital T truth. But there are so many ways to experience and interpret everything that's going on here around us, everything that we are getting to experience, everything that we are creating through our own experience and our own choices and our own interpretations of everything that's going on. We get to create our own beliefs, our own understanding. But as soon as we start to force those beliefs and understanding on others, then we're starting to get into the realm of ego mind. We're actually moving out of the spiritual, mystical union and back into the ego mind. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but let's call a spade a spade. That's what's happening, is that we are now back in and experiencing that understanding, that truth, that knowing through the material human experience versus from the source of all knowing. I'm not here to judge whether that's right or wrong, but that is the experience of what's happening when we start to think there is only one way and it's this way. Think of how many wars, think of how many deaths, think of how much hate and strife have been caused through that particular path of understanding, that it's my way or the highway. So true mysticism, true union with the divine, true embodiment of godliness is, to me, all about following that pathless path, allowing ourselves as a unique instrument of this creation to interpret for ourselves what we are experiencing in the discovery of that divinity, what we're interpreting and then making sense of here on this plane and in this realm of our cosmic being here in this earthly body. And we get to experience that individually. So many teachers, systems, gurus, religions, practices can help guide us there, can help illuminate the path, can give us a set of signposts to follow. But it is truly your own experience that you get to be in, that you get to share with others. And that's what true mysticism is about. Okay, myth number 3 is that mysticism and spirituality are about leaving your body and the earth. Again, other systems and practices may be all about that type of understanding, that your spiritual nature is the ultimate nature, and that this world here is this is hell. This is all struggle. This is a shit show down here. And we're just trying to get back to this spiritual realm where everything is bliss and it's beautiful. I don't deny. And I know from direct experience that that spiritual realm is bliss. It's so beautiful. It is love. It is ultimate joy. It's like tears streaming down your face, but through absolute ultimate joy and ecstasy. It is that. And we could certainly argue that that's the place to get to. That's the ultimate goal. Like, let's get there and let's use these practices and these systems and this mystical spiritual path to have that. But I don't believe that's why we're here, to just get back there. We've chosen to be here in this earthly realm for a reason. The path of the mystic, in my beliefs and through my own understanding, is to be at one with our divinity here in this earthly plane and being able to express that through our body. The earth plane is a magical paradise. It is a beautiful place to experience a life in its creation and in its destruction, a life in its full cycle, a life that comes into existence and pops out of existence, and to be able to actually experience that whole thing. That's incredible. If all you ever experienced was just life, was just awareness, and it wouldn't even be awareness, it would be beingness, that you're just alive, that you are just light, that you are just here. It may seem like bliss, and then therefore may seem like, well, heck, why wouldn't I want to be that in that all the time? Because this life is hard and I struggle with X, Y, and Z, and these things are difficult, and life is suffering. Why would we want to be in that suffering? The suffering creates this incredible contrast for us to experience a fullness, a wholeness that isn't necessarily there when we are existing only in the spiritual realm. When we're existing in the spiritual realm, we are pure existence. We are pure light, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's beautiful, but it's limited in its limitlessness. We have limitations here on earth as well, but they're different. The limitations here create a contrast for us to experience a wholeness of both existence and non-existence, light and darkness, that yin and yang, both existing and balancing out one another. There's beauty in that. There's something to behold within that, something ineffable. And to me, just awe-inspiring to be within that experience and to also be co-creating within that experience. So to just want to leave this and go back to the spiritual plane and exist only in that, sure, that could be anyone's goal. And I'm not here to tell you what you are here to do and want and desire. You can absolutely desire that and go for it. But it's a myth that that's what mysticism and spirituality are all about, that you are just trying to get to heaven. You're just trying to get to nirvana. You're just trying to get the hell out of this place so that you can get to that next most beautiful place and ascend. When you hear the word ascension, it can obviously make us think that, oh, okay, we're ascending, leaving our bodies and going to this better spiritual realm. But ascension really is about the expansion of our consciousness. And our consciousness is our understanding of our soul and source here within our bodies. It's our body and our human self, our ego mind understanding itself and becoming aware of itself, ourself as this multidimensional being. So that understanding is consciousness. And as our consciousness expands in that understanding, it's ascending into new realms of being, new realms of understanding. And those new realms can be amazing, can be blissful and lovely and wonderful, but it's happening here in this body, in this realm, in this earthly plane. And once we choose as a soul to, okay, I'm done with this, I'm done with that set of lessons, this contrast, this experience, I'm ready to go back to just that pure spiritual etheric plane, then you do, and you go. So that is myth number 3 to demystify that mysticism and spirituality are about leaving our body. It's actually about embodiment. It's about us understanding ourselves as a soul in a body and then getting to experience the earthly plane through that lens, through that understanding. That's when it gets juicy. That's when it gets really incredible, really amazing, to where we are experiencing this realm in a wholly different way. Okay, myth number 4 is that mysticism and spirituality make you a better person. There's a hierarchy that exists within the ego that will put in place those who have practiced, studied, adhered to, followed certain things, paid a certain amount of money, worn certain clothes, gone to certain sacred places, and somehow that makes that person, those people, more spiritual, and that the adherence to spirituality and mysticism makes you a better person. Being a mystic means you make a decision, and that decision is to come into union with your divine nature, with divinity, with God, with creation itself. It's just a decision. It's a choice that we make, and then a lens in which we live our life through. That decision doesn't make us better than anybody else. It's just a choice that we make. The version of you that didn't make that choice or hadn't yet made that choice isn't worse than the one that did make that choice. It's just now a new way of seeing the world, living this experience, and interpreting everything that we get to go through here. It doesn't make you better. than someone else. The things that make you better are the everyday choices that you make to be kind, to live from love, and to give from love. But choosing a spiritual, mystical life in and of itself doesn't make you better. It's all of the choices that make you better. And we're not saying better by contrast to other people, but even better for yourself. It's the ego mind that creates the hierarchy that a Dalai Lama or Mother Teresa or a Gandhi are better than this person over here or this one that hasn't done any of that work or has done awful things in the world. We can judge people through human standards, and then we can also see people as divine beings and that we're all equal in that way, that we are all God here existing in our human experience and experiencing that contrast, that self within self. All of that can be experienced by and held by and lived through by every single person, creature here on the planet. It's just whether or not you choose to have that experience and choose to have that understanding, choose to live from that knowing. And just because you do doesn't make you better. It just is giving you that perspective. Now, will it make you feel better to live this way? That's an argument we could have, right? Because the expansion of our consciousness does raise our frequency and give us a different level of experience here that can then feel better in what we may have been suffering from or living within the conditions of prior to that expansion. But with expansion also comes a cracking open of our old selves, and that's uncomfortable. That is hard work, and that is difficult. So the betterment of our conditions when living a mystical spiritual life isn't easy. It doesn't come easily. It comes through difficult choices, and it comes through some dark nights of the soul, which are very real. Again, all choices that you can choose to make, or you can choose to not do any of that and live unconsciously to that unfolding or to ourselves as these divine beings. And you can live here and live out your human existence that way. That doesn't make you a worser person. That's the beautiful thing about this, is that it's everyone's choice as to the path at which they wish to follow and the understanding and the lens at which they see this life through. You may remember a couple of years ago, a story came out about the Dalai Lama. There was a video of him asking a little boy to suck his tongue. Not something that went over lightly within the media or with a lot of people, including myself, because I don't see the Dalai Lama as someone who is infallible or that is above reproach or is someone that, because he is the spiritual leader of Tibet, that makes him untouchable or that he has no human faults. When we put people on a pedestal, it's just farther for them to fall. We are all on an equal plane in who we are. The only thing that distinguishes us from each other are the choices that we make. We could say that wasn't a great choice that the Dalai Lama made in that moment. Does it make him less of a spiritual leader? Not necessarily, but it does make him less of a icon that we created him into, that humans put on him as a role that he has to carry in this life. Who is he really? What is he really? He's no different than you or I in the fact that he is an emanation of God, that he is a spark of creation, living out this human soul hybrid experience just through a system that humans created. He has become a chosen one. So that's the myth to be careful of, is that any of these choices to live a spiritual life or to be a mystic or to live into that understanding just automatically makes us better. Only your choices make you better. And only that betterment is for yourself, not in contrast or comparison to others. And when we truly come to that understanding or that knowing, then we are living from that truth of our divine nature, of our divinity, and that we all are divine. Last but not least, myth number 5 is that mysticism and spirituality are pursuits or something to attain. We talked a lot about different religions, whether that's Tibetan Buddhism or Taoism or Christianity or yoga or anything that may have come through any of the ancient spiritual teachings. All of these teachings have a place, and they're all inspiring in their ways. And all of them have given us teachers that have shared wise and beautiful understandings or interpretations of what's happening here. What's going on? Who are we? What is this whole experience about? But when we choose to live as a mystic or to live a spiritual life, it's not something that we're then setting out to attain. That's setting us up as, again, this sucks and there's something better over here. When we're in that understanding, we are in pursuit of, we are on the path of trying to get to this other place that's better. Someone told us heaven's better. Someone told us nirvana's better. Someone said that this spiritual plane is the truth of all existence. And we got to get back there. And we've got to do these certain things in order to get there. And then we get my 72 wives. Those were all human constructs to interpret and tell other humans how to live and be better and maybe be more godly and maybe be more spiritual and maybe live a better existence. But as we talked about in myth number 2, there is no one way. And in this myth, there is no pursuit. There's nothing to get. There's no prize at the end of all of this. When we choose to live a mystic's life, a mystical experience, as I said earlier, it's a choice and it's a decision, and then it is. It just is. It is that we understand we are the reflection of our source consciousness coming out through these eyes and through this body, and then we're getting to experience it and getting to interpret all of our experiences. We get to come to that truth and that understanding that we're more than just this body, that we are this consciousness, which is just another word that gives meaning to the soul that is the traveler that's moving through this experience. And we get to have this body and this moment to speak to each other and interpret things and to share and to just simply be. When we make that choice to be in that understanding, it just is. We don't need to then go and do a whole bunch of things in order for that to be truth, in order for that to be now what we are living in. Like, okay, I've got to go and study all this stuff, say all these things, give all this money over here, go do this hard and difficult thing. Life is the hard and difficult thing. This life, this human experience is what we get to live and move through in order to unfold in our knowing that we are this divine light that comes through the living. And it comes through the understanding that comes through the living. And it comes through the courage that we then take on to move through this life in a different way, in a way that is breaking free from the programs and the norms and the conventions that humanity puts on us. Those constructions can make it feel and seem so safe for us here and can feel like, oh, that's what we're doing here. We're here to make money and buy things and live comfortably and have a bunch of stuff around us. Living a spiritual life doesn't mean that you can't have all those things. It just means that we're living through a different understanding of what those things are and what they mean to us, and that we aren't just that. And life isn't just about the pursuit of those things. It's about the realization that we are divine. Realization can happen through a set of experiences, practices, doings, but truly it is an experience that just appears. It's a state of existence rather than a pursuit within that existence. Mysticism and spirituality, when lived in and understood at their core, is like breath. We don't choose to breathe. We just do. Breath just is, and it's essential. Breath happens, and it gives us life, allows us to experience life. When we allow our breath to move through us and open ourselves in a new way, we can make the analogy that it is like God breathing through us, living through us, the light experiencing itself within the limits and the contrast of this form. But it isn't something we have to go do and achieve. It's something that just is. So it just is, and it's so essential. And that's the beauty of how profound it is, that you're actually experiencing essence, the essence of life itself. So those are the 5 myths that I wanted to demystify today for you. I hope in addressing and demystifying these myths that mysticism and spirituality become and are a part of your everyday life. We all are mystics. We all are emanations of God. We all are souls in a body here to have these incredible experiences. And when we choose this and forget about all of the fluff and the myths that we just discussed, then we can truly live into our divine nature and what I consider our birthright here as humans living out this soulful experience. That's it today, my friends. I'll see you next time. And here's to you living a life with greater meaning, higher purpose, and true joy.